Welcome to the Power of Hospitality podcast, where we discover the world of refined luxury and impeccable service. I'm your host, Jupiter Humphrey-Bishop, and in each episode, we interview some of the most inspirational and influential professionals in the industry. Today, I'm delighted to welcome to the show Sarah Dandashy, expert in hospitality, public speaker, founder of the TV travel expert show, Ask A Concierge, and even author of her own book. So Sarah, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show today. So welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself and explain how you got into the hospitality industry?
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me on. Well, you did a wonderful job introducing me. So a little brief background on a lot of things. I worked in the luxury hospitality space for nearly 20 years, 15 of those years as a hotel concierge. I was part of the organization Les Clés d'Or, for those that are familiar with it, the Gold Keys of Concierge. And about 13 years ago, I ended up basically really developing a brand on social media called Ask A Concierge. And that's evolved into so many things. And it's allowed me to create a whole element of my business that's been really exciting. And I do a bit of public speaking. I just did a TED Talk that just came out. I work with a lot of big travel and hotel brands as spokesperson work, but also creating content for them. I also work in as a consultant. So for those different brands that are elevating their customer service standards from all different backgrounds. I work with, brands in regards to that. And then I do, not a lot of people know this because this happens in the background. But I do have select ultra high net worth private concierge clients. So I still very much keep my fingers in the mix of things. Maybe not necessarily behind a desk at a hotel, but absolutely working with all the top hotels in and around the world as my clients end up traveling. And yes, it's been a really exciting journey, but I always like to say it's like once a concierge, always a concierge. And but I certainly still wear many hats. So, and then I also host 2 different podcasts as well. So, I just keep myself busy.
Very busy. Wow. And you started as working in hotels, but before that, were you working for was it a production company or a media company? Tell us a little bit about.
So, yes, I fell into hospitality when I was going to school at Georgetown University. So I was studying there for a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service. My cousin at the time was working at the Four Seasons in Georgetown, and he had gone to Lausanne. So he had gone to hotel school.
Wow.
I, in an effort to have a more well-rounded educational experience and just knowing I needed some sort of balance outside of campus life, I knew I was working throughout my entire college career. And so I've been working at a restaurant, and my cousin was like, well, why don't you try working in hotels? And so I was like, okay, sure. I guess I can do that. So that was really my introduction to the hotel space. So I'd worked in restaurants, obviously, but certainly from a hotel's perspective. But my background was definitely more of food and beverage, and it was a wonderful experience to get started there. For one, being so young, so I was like a sponge. I was taking everything that they were offering, and at the time, Four Seasons did a fantastic onboarding process. So it would be, I think, at least 2-3 days of not only educating new hires on the property, but very much of Four Seasons standards. And to this day, I'm so grateful for that opportunity, because regardless of where I ended up working after that, there were still so many key tenets and little, I don't want to say not necessarily rules, but like suggestions and ways of behaving in hospitality that I've carried with myself throughout my career since then. So I always like to say that falling into it, as many people in hospitality tend to agree, is that I sort of fell into it. But it seemed to be a right fit and a right mix. And then as I moved cities, sort of fell into it again. So it's like every time I was like, well, I'm open. Let's see where the world
Yeah.
will take me, and sort of pulled back into it. But yes, I always had a passion for film and TV. And so I was also always working in, actually, while I was going to school at Georgetown while working at the Four Seasons, while working at a radio station, like a proper radio station, like one of the
Wow.
main ones in Washington, D.C. And then, had also done some production work. So, when people say you do a lot, and I was like, I've always done a lot. I've always had several things. So very much building out a career in, I guess you could say, film and media, as well as also hospitality has always been very much what I've been doing my whole life.
Fantastic. Wow. And would you say, that side of the production side, did that light a spark for the kind of theatrical side of the hospitality? I really think hospitality does have that. You see the, flambe of crêpe Suzette and all these different things. And there is a bit of an element of theatre to hospitality. So is that kind of, would you say that was linked in your career?
I think it's a natural link for probably anyone,
Mhm.
I think there's an element of that, but I actually think more so what the link is, it's two things. It's one, it's the art of storytelling, which is obviously when you're talking about film and TV, that so much storytelling. And then also in hospitality, we're telling a story. So there's absolutely that, but I think also maybe more so the link is this really fascination and appreciation for people.
Yeah.
And when you really are interested in people and why they do what they do or what makes them operate, obviously that also ties into, film and media, because it's all storytelling about people and why people do what they do. But then also in hospitality, that's how you connect to individuals. And so if you genuinely are interested in either, making something memorable for them or connecting with them or, understanding them so that you're able to accurately, anticipate their next move. I think that that's kind of more of how it's like a bit more nuanced. So yeah.
Amazing. So then you moved into a concierge role and a few years later into a different concierge role and worked your way up to become a head concierge. So how was that transition from a concierge into a head concierge where you're suddenly in charge of, managing part of a team, managing and making the decisions and final say? How was that?
Well, so I will say, so it was a natural progression. It's obviously wasn't done overnight. And I had already been a professional concierge for at least 10 years, but at that point. So you understand how things work. So it really was a natural sort of progression. And so it was by the time that, I stepped into that, I already had sort of been doing all of those things, maybe just didn't have an official title. So it was sort of like an easy transition in my particular case.
Amazing. And of course, you're now part of the, now correct me how I say this, Le Clef d'Or USA. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
what is this all about? It's a prestigious kind of concierge award. How did you get involved in that?
Oh, so yeah, so Lake Leodore, which you also have it in the UK, the Society of the Golden Keys, I
Mhm.
think is what they technically call it in the UK.
Okay.
But yes, so that's what I had sort of like mentioned in my introduction. But I was part of Lake Leodore. So Lake Leodore is an international organization. I'm have been part of the US chapter. I'm an affiliate member now, as I don't work actually at a hotel anymore, as I have
Okay.
my own company. But you can apply to be a full member when you're working in a hotel. And
Wow.
so, in general, it's a very there's a lot of requirements to be able to join, as it's a high level and a high standard
Mhm.
for the professional organization, and it's been a true honor to be a part of it. But normally you have to be at least a concierge in the lobby for about 5 years. You have to have two sponsors. You have to take a test that's both written as well
Wow.
as an interview, and it's quite a process. And but again, such a wonderful organization to have been a part of, and then yes, and so a little bit with that background, joined in the U.S. Sort of chapter of it, and as an effort to promote young concierge, as it's been a somewhat aging profession, and they started a sort of competition several years ago that's to encourage younger generation of concierge. Now, normally the title of the award goes in the name of a previous concierge who has been very instrumental to the profession. They've normally passed away, but for a better understanding of what that equivalent of that award would be, is sort of like the best young concierge in the world. So in each
Wow.
country puts forward a member to represent them. So you could almost look at it like the Concierge Olympics. And I say this, very tongue in cheek, but it is obviously very serious and highly respected. And then so I was very lucky to be able to uh, have that honor of that award in 2015, and it was the first time that the USA had ever won. So that
Wow.
was also really exciting.
Gosh, sounds amazing. And of course,
Yeah,
this must have led into the inspiration to create this incredible TV travel expert show, Ask a Concierge. I mean,
hmm,
this is absolutely amazing. And I've seen quite a few clips of it. So could you explain
okay,
just a little bit of the inspiration behind what was the kind of reason of starting this? And yeah.
sure. Well, I will actually clarify. So I actually started that before I even
Ah,
became a member of Lake
okay,
Lador.
okay.
So yes, I've been doing Ask a Concierge for quite some time. At the time, I had just started at the London West Hollywood property, sort of an upscale boutique property in the West Hollywood, Beverly Hills area.
Mhm.
And I was taking a writing course to do a web series. And so fine, very much up until that point, any sort of film and TV endeavors I was doing was sort of on the side. And then the day job was very much me working at a hotel, at a property, day job or night job, depending on what shift. And so I started that in 2012, and I was taking this writing course, and the instructor had asked for everybody to do a video blog on something that they're an expert in. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't know, I work out, I eat healthy, but that's not what I'm going to be doing a vlog on. And so in a time crunch, really, I was like, oh, I guess I'll talk about things to do in Los Angeles, what to eat, see, do in Los Angeles. I tell people to do that on a regular basis. That's part of my job. Nobody's going to like this. It's fine. And I'll call it Ask a Concierge. And specifically Ask a Concierge and not Ask the Concierge, because it wasn't about asking me everything, but it was Ask a Concierge. And it was like a nod to the profession. And so wherever you are, go ask a concierge to get advice on what you're doing. So that's very much how it started. And as I started, and I always leaned heavily into video before Instagram was even leaning into video, before Twitter was leaning into video. If a platform allowed any sort of video content, I was sharing it in very short form. It was sometimes even 15-second clips,
Okay.
and then certainly on YouTube. And so shortly after sort of coming up with this brand and putting those videos out there, realized that, oh, wow, I actually might be onto something. So for me, as I was building that and as the brand was building, it was also, I didn't want anyone to ever question my professionalism. And so that was sort of how I got involved with Lake Lador as well, is that it's like, no, I'm not just a concierge, but it's like, Lake Lador concierge. And then, wow, to win an award within the organization as well was just an additional feather in the cap.
Gosh. So for anyone listening today that doesn't quite know really what a concierge role entails, maybe perhaps just explain a little bit on, what's actually the role of a concierge and what's the planning process and thought process that's behind, the role of a concierge.
Sure. I'd like to think in a nutshell, describing what the concierge role is, certainly to, a hotel property, is basically It's a mix of two things. It's a mix of they are the guest liaison to the city, so they are the best friend that can help guide you to the best way to experience the city, whether it's local coffee shops, the coolest new clubs,
Mhm.
where to go shopping, the best tours, inside scoop. They are your best friend that
Mhm.
knows all the ins and outs of the city. And then there's an element of it that's a little bit part personal assistant that, again, you might be helping a guest or, curating a beautiful stay, but then, oh no, they've come and they've lost their wallet, or there's a big crunch and they need to make sure that these signed documents get FedEx back to their office by the next day. And you're helping guests with that. So
Mhm.
it really is, you are wearing so many hats, but you are there to be this sort of liaison to the city, as well as, sort of an elevated personal assistant to all the guests that are staying at the property. So, and it makes it becomes a lot of fun because you get to know guests on a little bit more of a personal level.
Mhm.
And you can become more, involved with them, and very much. And I've seen this time and time again. And it's not just in my case, but in the case of all my concierge colleagues, is that guests often come back because they develop a very close relationship with the concierge at that particular property.
Mhm.
They're coming back because they love the concierge there, or they love also the other employees as well. But many guests seem to form a closer relationship with the concierge at a property.
Yeah. I guess it's really about creating that experience for the guests. So,
Mhm.
I mean, in your opinion, what would you say actually, what is good guest experience? But it's something that we're always talking about, but how do you actually define that and what does that actually mean?
At the essence of it, it's being genuine
Mhm.
and being present.
Yeah.
That really is what it's about. Because if you're present and you're truly engaging, you're listening, and you're genuinely involved,
Mhm.
you're going to want to be anticipatory. You're going to want to be able to find these moments where you can sort of do something a little bit unexpected and create that magic. And then you make them feel heard. And so on the other side of the guest experience, it's that they feel heard, they feel understood, they feel comfortable, welcomed, and they feel safe.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, all of these things are parts of hospitality, that it's so much more than, just being anticipatory. It really is helping sort of create this safe, comfortable place that's a sort of home away from home,
Mhm.
that is really what guests are attracted to.
Yeah. Well, really, it's about those incredible high standards as well. And as the role of a head concierge, how would you say you ensured that the high standards stayed high? I mean, as you worked in these top hotels in Beverly
Mhm.
Hills, that must have been really an incredible experience. How did you maintain that, and how did you ensure that your guests and the staff were able to provide that guest experience?
Well, it all comes down to training.
Mhm.
And so it was very much is that as soon as you bring somebody on, making sure that the property has the appropriate training. Now, not every hotel does in-depth training, like,
Mhm.
for example, what I had at the Four Seasons. Um, but, uh, but the peninsula was very fantastic. My last property was a little bit more relaxed, but what they did, which was interesting, is that where they may not have done an in-depth sort
Mhm.
of service training, they hired well. So they hired people who had also worked at some of these other five-star, five diamond properties, so that they knew that the people that they were hiring sort of had that bit of that background.
Mhm.
But again, it's reinforcing that these are the standards. This is what we are striving for.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have an external organization like a Forbes or something like this
Mhm.
that's actually rating you, it's making sure that the team is still performing on those standards. And so it's constantly checking in with your team members, making sure that they're still providing that elevated guest experience. So really setting the stage very early on that this is what we strive for and this is the type of experience that we have.
Amazing. And as a concierge, it's your job to ensure that all the recommendations are really up to date, and you're able to provide, the best options and the best recommendations. So what would you be looking for in a venue to be featured on kind of Sarah's concierge list of recommendations?
Well, that's cute. Well, a lot of it just comes down to the personal relationship
Okay.
uh, with the venue. Who's going to be the most
Mhm.
consistent experience? So if I have a personal relationship with the particular venue, obviously that's fantastic. They know, we understand, we speak the same
Mhm.
language as far as making sure that everything is excellent and elevated. But then it's also, going out there and checking out new properties and new venues but it's all about making those sort of introductions and going out there and actually experiencing it firsthand. And I will say this is that sometimes some people are like, oh wow, that might be expensive to kind of go to all the best restaurants in town. And there are ways around that. You don't necessarily, I think a true concierge, you don't necessarily have to eat the steak at all the steak restaurants to know,
Mhm.
the difference. Obviously, if you can and you want to, you can absolutely do that. But it's just understanding the whole experience. I'll give an example. When I first started as a concierge in Beverly Hills, I had just moved to the area. I had never lived here
Mhm.
before. I didn't know the cities. I was, figuring it out really as I went. And on the one hand, the key sort of outlook is that I may not have known the answer, but I had the right attitude to find the
Mhm.
answer. And I think that that's a very critical thing for everybody in hospitality, is that you don't necessarily have to know the answer right away, because every day is different. So
Mhm.
you are going to be thrown curveballs all the
Mhm.
time, but it's your attitude towards those requests that make all the difference. And
Mhm.
it's like, I don't know, but let me find out for you.
Yeah.
No one will ever have an issue with that. But I digress. The story I was trying to say is, when I started as a concierge, the head concierge at the property that I was starting at, the L'Hermitage in Beverly
Okay.
Hills, um, the head concierge took me out a couple evenings, and she was like, "Look, let's go to a couple of these restaurants so you can just get a feel for what they are." And so we didn't go eat at every restaurant. We might have eaten at one, but then we actually went and kind of walked in,
Mhm.
walked around, so you could see the atmosphere. You can see the type of clientele that's in the restaurant, and you get a vibe and a feel for it,
Mhm.
because that's also half of what it is. It's the
Yeah.
actual atmosphere. And so we didn't necessarily spend a lot of money, but we were able to go and visit at least 15 different restaurants, which then already gave me an immediate arsenal of recommendations. I got to meet the host or the manager.
Mhm.
So it set up a personal relationship with all of those venues. And
Amazing.
then I could speak to it as I'd actually been in there. I didn't necessarily need to know what that particular steak tasted like. I'm using that as a random example, but you get what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that, it's going out there and trying to experience them as much as you can.
Mhm. Yeah.
And there are many ways to do it, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it.
Amazing. So you must have met so many incredible people along the way throughout your
Mhm.
career journey. Is there anyone that kind of really stood out in particular, that really inspired you, or gave you some really great advice?
So I would definitely say, yeah, absolutely. So, two, and they were actually, both of them were my sponsors when I joined Les Clédor.
Mhm.
So one was sort of the first head concierge at the first hotel that I was a concierge at, who I just mentioned, Christine Grimm, and who took me around to these restaurants.
Mhm.
And she really, that was my first time being a concierge when I was working with her, really
Yeah.
elevated the standards, and was very organized, and really set the bar high for me as I became a concierge. And fantastic, she's phenomenal
Mhm.
at what she does. And then the second person, um, who is the dearest, most phenomenal concierge ever, is James Little, and he's head concierge at the Peninsula in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
He was my boss, and I come from working at the L'Hermitage to then working with him under there. And by the way, we still text to this day, and we work
Mhm.
with each other on different things. He contributed to my book, and he really, it was like almost took everything that I learned at my previous property and just took it to the next level. I mean, that hotel really is, I believe, is the best hotel
Mhm.
in Los Angeles, in
Wow.
Beverly Hills. And I know there's a lot of great ones
Mhm.
and they're very close seconds, but there's something about just the way that they deliver service there, that it is very elevated, very intuitive, and they have an extremely high number of repeat guests. So
Mhm.
you're able to really know the guests well, and has that outlook of like, we'll figure it out. It might be
Yeah,
a crunch time, but we will figure it out. And so, yeah, those two are really stood out in my career for sure.
amazing. So you have written the book Hospitality Within, which congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
This is amazing. So, what was the kind of inspiration behind the book, and how did you kind of piece that together?
Yeah, well, so Hospitality from Within, I ended up writing it sort of in part of the pandemic.
Mhm.
For anybody that knows me closely knows that it's uh, I I work 18-hour days most of the time. I don't rarely even take days off. And now obviously with the travel schedule, it's crazy. So you could just imagine writing a book would be challenging to do. But I took advantage of the pandemic in that I wasn't necessarily zigzagging all over the place and doing 25 things. And I was able to really tackle it. But for me, I had always wanted to write a book, and I have a second
Mhm.
one that I'm working on as
Oh,
well.
wow.
And but I always wanted to write a book, and I knew that I wanted it to be something that was like sort of giving back to the
Mhm.
industry. I think this was sort of the perfect time that I could sort of gather all of those wonderful lessons that I've learned in my years and working in these fantastic properties and come up with these sort of key tenets, these key pillars of hospitality, that it didn't matter where I worked. These were the key pillars that we embodied at every property that I worked at. And it's got a lot of quotes in it because I've had the great pleasure of being able to interview a lot of different CEOs and
Mhm.
execs in the hospitality industry. So to hear it, the goal was not to necessarily hear it just from my voice. Obviously, it's very much the lessons I learned, but then also pulling in other executives and top professionals in the
Mhm.
industry, because it's through all of our lenses.
Mhm.
We've all had these unique experiences, and then it's finding the through line between all of that. And so there's a wonderful chapter at the end that has a bunch of wonderful concierge stories from
Mhm.
different concierge and their experiences and these special moments that they've been able to create.
Wow.
And it's been this really, really, it ended up being a really lovely, well, first of all, challenging process, but as far as once it got out, a
Mhm.
lovely reception, as so many people have resonated with it. And the use of quotes and being a little bit of a easier read has been also, like, I keep using this happy accident. It was not by design, but it ended up being great because then hospitality professionals of all levels can read the book, resonate with it. My goodness, writing a book is a tough endeavor. And I'm like, why am I doing this again? But I know I have another one in me. So I am working on another one.
So, well, I've actually listened to, Sarah, to your latest TEDx talk, which I must say was
Oh,
really, really good. Where
thank
was
you.
the kind of the inspiration behind this? Was this your first TEDx talk?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And I particularly like the bit about the teddy bear story. So maybe
Mhm.
share a little bit on that.
Yeah. So TEDx Talks had sort of always been something that was of interest to me, but
Mhm.
it is something of trying to figure out, okay, well, what is the message behind it?
Yeah.
And we actually came up with what is a very simple yet very important topic.
Mhm.
And the title of the TEDx is The Secret to Making Someone Feel Special. And at the end of the day, it's about encouraging individuals in a time that we're so disconnected because we're on our phones and everything's digital, yet we're craving connection more than ever. And it's, I had sort of mentioned it earlier in our conversation, when you talked about the elements of hospitality as far as being genuine
Mhm.
and being present. This too also brings that into play, is that if you're present and you're genuine, you're picking up on things and you're picking
Mhm.
up on nuances. And if you're trying to make someone feel special, it's it's taking maybe what they might normally do. And there's an element of, we always talk about like exceeding expectations, but what is that really? And that's sort of disrupting the routine. And it's the interesting concept that at first I was like, well, disrupting the routine, I don't know if that's really what I'm trying to say, but it really, that is what it is. Anticipating or like exceeding expectations is disrupting routine because people have a certain expectation. So again, it's kind of breaking it down into so many different ways. But the teddy bear story, I guess, had stayed at a property and they had checked out, and all of a sudden, when they were boarding their flight and they were traveling with their family, they'd realized that their child left their teddy bear at the hotel room. And this teddy bear this child had never lived a day without this teddy bear. And so they call the concierge, and luckily the concierge ends up finding it. And so that's a feat in and of itself. Sometimes, as we all know, hotels can it can be challenging to find something lost and found. So the concierge finds the teddy bear, and obviously in a normal circumstance, they would just pack it up, send it back out, and they would have it by the next day. But the concierge took it a step further, and they basically took the teddy bear, and they took the teddy bear on an adventure around the property. They took pictures of it lounging by the pool, at the restaurant, in the spa, all of these things. And then they ended up texting these photos to the parents. So by the time they ended up landing at home, they had these photos, and then sent a little note in an email so that they could share it with their child that, oh, I'm so sorry. I was a little bit delayed. I just wanted to take a little bit of extra time enjoying the spa and having high tea before coming, but I'll be there tomorrow. So the parent was able to share this cute little story about the teddy bear just taking some extra time at the hotel. And then they ended up packing up the teddy bear nicely and sending it home. But it's such a simple story. They didn't, first of all, the concierge didn't have to do that. And they could have just sent the concierge, the teddy bear back. But because they created a story, they turned what really could have been a disaster into this like delightful moment. It's this beautiful example of how, just taking this touch of imagination and sort of twisting the experience, you can really turn something that could have been a potential disaster into this delightful memory.
Oh gosh, what a lovely topic for a TED talk to do teddy bear for a TED talk.
Yes. Oh yes, unintentional. I love that. I hadn't even thought about that till now. So very cute.
But what a lovely talk. How to make someone truly, really feel special in the industry. So how would you prepare yourself for, you're going on stage or you're going on camera set, because you do a lot of different podcast things and TV things. How would you mentally prepare yourself for a really big day, such as one of those?
Making sure I'm at the top of my game every day is something that's very important to me. So it's making sure that I get enough sleep, which is actually the one thing that I probably am challenged the most with. But making sure, getting enough sleep, eating well, being hydrated, making sure that I'm working out. And so long as you are physically in good shape, you can also mentally be really sharp.
For anyone listening today, thinking about perhaps maybe becoming a concierge, what kind of characteristics or skill or mindset would they need to do the role really well?
So, I mean, it's all about having that can-do attitude, And with that, it's figuring out the right. Sorry, I'm pausing because all of a sudden I hear the echo again, and I hadn't heard it the whole time. Wait. Okay, wait. I don't think I hear it anymore. Okay. Perfect. So, so the key characteristics, as far as becoming a concierge, very much about having that can-do attitude, and that is just the willingness to figure out the right answers. The being able to showcase that if somebody is giving you a request, that you value it as much as they value it. It's important to you, and sort of that commitment to just always be learning and finding mentors along the way in your career and in throughout the experience. So it's but it really just comes down to having the right attitude. If you really want to be a stellar concierge and create those special moments, being very guest focused and finding joy in creating special moments for others, those are the key tenets to really being a stellar concierge.
Amazing. So, well, before we just move on to the fire round questions, just a couple of super quick questions just to kind of wrap up from today. So, where do you see your career going next? I mean, that's the multi-million-pound question is where do you see your career going next?
So like, I mean, it's interesting. I almost don't even look at it as a career anymore as I am, more of an entrepreneur at this point. Certainly it's sort of continuing on this trajectory. I've been, again, very, very lucky to have the opportunity. Well, I was lucky, but also a lot of hard work has gone into the opportunities to, do something like a TEDx, for example, and write a book. I do plan on writing a second book. My speaking engagements are continuing to grow, which are all very exciting. My private concierge business is also growing as well. Again, not the part that's shared on social media. Many people don't know that that's even going on behind the scenes, but that's been so exciting how that's growing. And I'm working with some wonderful, wonderful, clients and just kind of helping them curate their sort of best lives, so to speak. But yeah, just continuing to grow the brand. I mean, there's an element of having certain professional goals. And I think as you focus on those, and I think this goes for everyone, is that you have those professional goals, but so long as you are putting forth the effort to continuously grow and achieve the next thing, whatever that next thing is for you, it's amazing what opportunities come to you. You become a magnet for opportunities. And in those opportunities might come something that you didn't even imagine or could dream of. And so I always like to say you have a plan, but you stay open to what comes to you. And the other thing that I will say, and I think this applies to everyone, and I've been big on this for many, many years, over a decade now, is staying relevant. If you do a fantastic job at whatever it is you do, whatever your role is, you're making yourself relevant at your property. You're making your profession relevant. You're making yourself relevant. And if you're relevant, people are going to come to you with new ideas, new opportunities, new ways to grow and advance your career. So, again, I have goals in mind, but I think that there's still so much more to discover that I don't even know yet. But I'm excited to see what's going to come my way, and just again hoping to just continue to share the positive message and inspire others to really find it in themselves to fully embrace whatever it is that they might be doing in the hospitality industry.
Amazing. And would you have done anything differently if you could go back in time?
Good question.
Perhaps not. I mean, perhaps, yeah.
No, I'm going to say no because I have to be true to my authentic Sarah self. I was asked a similar question when I was 12 years old in an English class, and the teacher was like, "What would you change in your life?" And at 12 years old, the little philosopher I said no, because that would change who I am today. Any slight nuance would change who I am today. And so, could you say, "Oh, sure, I wish I would have trusted myself more and gone for this job earlier," or that? Sure. Yeah. Okay. But this was part of my journey. And so, no, these were all lessons. Okay. I may have stated something longer than I needed to, but it was apparently the lesson I needed to learn on the timeline. I needed to learn it. So no changes. All the mistakes, I embrace them.
Good. Okay, so if you were staying yourself in a top hotel and you had your own concierge, what would you like to see that concierge put on the itinerary for you? It's always a fun question.
A fun and tough question. My goodness. Wow. I think for them or for me, so I'm so relaxed. I'm very when you're in a high pressure
Mhm.
environment, you really learn to appreciate the simple things. For me, it's about really getting
And
to know me and picking up
finally,
on the
your favorite
nuances. And by the
memory.
way,
Yeah.
there's so much information out there. These Easter eggs, as people like to call them. We can all find these Easter eggs of clients staying at all of our
Yeah.
properties. It might take a little bit of searching online, but if somebody has a bit of an online presence, it's amazing what you can discover about them. And it's something that simple that really is touching for me. So I know it's not necessarily one thing,
Amazing.
but
Well, thank you so
just
much,
for them
Sarah.
kind of
Honestly, it's
realizing
been
like,
so
oh, this
lovely
is
to
what
have
you
you on the
like.
podcast show today.
Let's sprinkle in a bit of that,
Yeah, it's
especially when
been
I
an
don't
absolute
say it
pleasure to get
and
to know
they've
you
been able to
more
figure it
and
out.
to hear your story. Amazing. Okay, so we'll just move on to we've got
Thank you
3
so much.
fire-round questions.
Okay.
So
So that
these
brings us
are
to the end of
something
today's
maybe just one
episode.
word or one
We
sentence
interviewed
as an
Sarah
answer.
Dandashy
So
as
number
a
1, so what do you love
concierge.
most about
Stay with us as
hospitality?
we continue to go into the
The
hospitality
people.
Yeah.
industry, understanding the journeys of those who
What's
are the
the
most
probably the most
inspirational and
unusual request
influential.
you've ever had as a
See you soon.
concierge?
What am I allowed to say? Kidding. No, having to pick up outfits for somebody as they were flying into town and having everything all laid out and ready for them by the time they got to the hotel.
And finally, your favorite memory as a concierge?
My favorite memory are all the relationships that I've created and fostered with my colleagues. That for me, that's the thing that I miss the most is I miss my colleagues. You become such a family when you're in the trenches together. And uh, for all of those individuals, I'm forever grateful.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much, Sarah. Honestly, it's been so lovely to have you on the podcast show today. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you more and to hear your story.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for having me.
Thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of today's episode as we interviewed Sarah Dandashy as a concierge. Stay with us as we continue to go into the hospitality industry, understanding the journeys of those who are the most inspirational and influential. See you soon.